Simply put, the odds against life in the universe are astonishing. Yet, here we are, not only existing, but talking about existing. What can account for it? Can every one of those many parameters have been perfectly met by accident? At what point is it fair to admit that it is science itself that suggests that we cannot be the result of random forces? Doesn't assuming that an intelligence created these perfect conditions in fact require far less faith than believing that a life-sustaining Earth just happened to beat the inconceivable odds? But wait, there's more. The fine-tuning necessary for life to exist on a planet is nothing compared with the fine-tuning required for the universe to exist at all. For example, astrophysicists now know that the values of the four fundamental forces, gravity, the electromagnetic force, and the strong and weak nuclear forces, were determined less than 1/1,000,000th of a second after the Big Bang. Alter any one of these four values ever so slightly, and the universe as we know it could not exist. For instance, if the ratio between the strong nuclear force and the electromagnetic force had been off by the tiniest fraction of the tiniest inconceivable fraction, then no stars could have formed at all. Multiply that single parameter by all the other necessary conditions, and the odds against the universe existing are so heart-stoppingly astronomical that the notion that it all just happened defies common sense. It would be like tossing a coin and having it come up heads 10 quintillion times in a row. I don't think so. Fred Hoyle, the astronomer who coined the term Big Bang, said that his atheism was greatly shaken by these developments. One of the world's most renowned theoretical physicists, Paul Davies, has said that the appearance of design is overwhelming. Even the late Christopher Hitchens, one of atheism's most aggressive proponents, conceded that without question the fine-tuning argument was the most powerful argument of the other side. Oxford University professor of mathematics, Dr. John Lennox, has said, "The more we get to know about our universe, the more the hypothesis that there is a creator gains in credibility as the best explanation of why we are here." The greatest miracle of all time is the universe. It is the miracle of all miracles, one that inescapably points to something or someone beyond itself. I'm Eric Metaxas for Prager University.
Question number 3. Has any irrefutable corroborating evidence ever been produced that validates claims in the Bible for which witnesses not only could have, but should have existed? No. And this is the death blow for Jesus and the entire Bible, because not a single contemporaneous secular record or eyewitness account has ever been produced by anyone since the Bible was written that validates the life and works of Jesus or any of the other magical characters or miraculous events described in it.
I would like to present to you a case for the historical existence of Jesus. Lately, there have been many people who have been claiming that there is no evidence to verify his actual existence. It has become so widely claimed by recent speakers that most of us take for granted what we have been told, although it is rare to find anyone who has actually looked for themselves to verify this claim. First, you should know that this view is a new one. All throughout history, skeptics used to claim that Jesus didn't rise from the dead, or that his miracles were only parlor tricks, or that the disciples stole his body from the tomb, but they never claimed he didn't exist. Claiming that he never existed only became possible recently due to the long period of time that has passed since the first century. In the same way, right now it would be ludicrous to say that your great-grandfather never existed, but 1900 years later, it would be easy to convince someone of it. In actuality, there is much more evidence for Jesus' existence than there is for almost any important or famous person of that time. In this presentation, we will be using only non-biblical evidence. In other words, we won't be using the Bible to prove the Bible. We will also be stopping after every account to address the typical skeptical questions about each claim. I warn you though, if you watch this video, you will no longer be able to believe that there is no evidence for the existence of Jesus, and you might even start to question the integrity of the research of those that have told you that there isn't. I will be quoting from a website called thedivineevidence.com, and I will link it in the description section of this video. Cornelius Tacitus lived from 55 to 120 AD. Tacitus was a 1st and 2nd century Roman historian who lived through the reigns of over half a dozen Roman emperors. Considered one of the greatest historians of Rome, Tacitus verifies the biblical account of Jesus' execution at the hands of Pontius Pilate, who governed Judea from 26 to 36 AD during the reign of Tiberius. Tacitus writes the following: Christus, the founder of the Christian name, was put to death by Pontius Pilate, procurator of Judea in the reign of Tiberius. But the pernicious superstition, repressed for a time, broke out again, not only through Judea, where the mischief originated, but through the city of Rome also. It would confirm the following: that Jesus did exist, that he was the founder of Christianity, that Jesus was put to death by Pilate, that Christianity originated in Judea with Jesus, and that Christianity later spread to Rome. Skeptic Interjection 1. Could Tacitus have taken his information from Christian sources? Answer: because of his position as a professional historian and not as a commentator, it is more likely that Tacitus referenced government records over Christian testimony. It is also possible Tacitus received some of his information from his friend and fellow secular historian Pliny the Younger. Yet, even if Tacitus referenced some of Pliny's sources, it would be out of his character to have done so without critical investigation. An example of Tacitus criticizing testimony given to him even from his dear friend Pliny is found here in Annals 55. Tacitus distinguishes between confirmed and hearsay accounts almost 70 times in his History. If he felt this account of Jesus was only rumor or folklore, he would have issued his usual disclaimer that this account was unverified, but he did not. Skeptic Interjection 2. Could this passage have been a Christian interpolation or forgery? Answer: judging by the critical undertones of this passage, it is highly unlikely. Tacitus refers to Christianity as a superstition and an insuppressible mischief. Furthermore, there is not a surviving copy of Tacitus's Annals that does not contain this passage. There is no verifiable evidence of tampering of any kind in this passage. Skeptic Interjection 3. Why is this passage not quoted by the early church fathers? Answer: due to the condescending nature of Tacitus's testimony, early Christian authors most likely would not have quoted such a source, assuming Tacitus's writings were even available to them. However, our actual answer comes from the context of the passage itself. Nothing in Tacitus's statement mentions anything that was not already common knowledge among Christians. It simply provides evidence of Jesus' existence, which is a topic not debated at this point in history. Let's move on to Lucian of Samosata. Lucian was a 2nd century Greek satirist and rhetorician who scornfully describes his views of early Christianity. Though he ridicules the Christians and their Christ, his writings confirm Jesus was executed via crucifixion and that he was the founder of Christianity. He says, "The Christians, you know, worship a man to this day, the distinguished personage who introduced their novel rites and was crucified on that account. It was impressed on them by their original lawgiver that they are all brothers from the moment that they are converted and deny the gods of Greece and worship their crucified sage and live after his laws." What this passage reveals and how it confirms the biblical account: 1. That Jesus did exist. 2. That Jesus was the founder of Christianity. 3. Jesus was worshipped by his followers. And 4. That Jesus suffered death by crucifixion. Skeptic Interjection 1. Can we consider Lucian's testimony reliable, due to the source being a literary work? Answer: Lucian's comments revolved around historical events. In Lucian's work, The Way to Write History, he openly criticizes his contemporaries, who distort history to flatter their masters or those who fill in historical gaps with their personal conjecture. He writes, "The historian's one task is to tell the thing as it happened. He may nurse some private dislikes, but he will attach far more importance to the public good and set the truth high above his hate. For history, I say again, has this and only this for its own. If a man will start upon it, he must sacrifice to no God but truth. He must neglect all else. Skeptic interjection 2. Is it possible Lucian received his knowledge from Christian sources, or that this passage is an interpolation or a forgery? Answer. Seeing how adamant Lucian was in regards to historical accuracy and critical investigation, our answer is an emphatic no. As to the passage being a Christian forgery, chances are that the reference to Jesus would be far more favorable if this were so. Lucian refers to Jesus only as a man, a lawgiver, and a sage. Human, not divine descriptions. He never once refers to Jesus as a god. Furthermore, there isn't anything in the above statement that reveals what wasn't already known. It merely asserts that Jesus lived, preached, and died. Remember, at this time, Christians were trying to prove Jesus' divinity, not his existence.
There's a real soft place in the earth right under it.
On June 16, 1987, Ron Wyatt and a documentary film team from the United States traveled to eastern Turkey at the invitation of the governor of the Turkish province of Agri. There, they participate in a ceremony at the base of a site known locally as Doomsday Mountain. On June 20th, 1987, the governor of Agri proclaims to the world that the Turkish archaeological authorities confirmed the findings of the Ron Wyatt expedition and declare the area under investigation the landing site of the legendary Noah's Ark. Researchers have learned that prior to 1960, in the heart of the mountains of Ararat, while on a routine military reconnaissance survey, Turkish Air Force Lieutenant A. Kurtz took an aerial photograph of a curious boat-shaped object. Subsequent review by Turkish photographic specialists confirmed the dimensions of this object to be virtually identical to those stated in the Old Testament as the length and roughly the width of the famous Diluvian vessel. In 1960, news of these photos reaches the United States. They are brought before the Archaeological Research Foundation, an advanced group of scientists and explorers. Under the aegis of the Turkish military, a joint Turkish-American expedition is assembled.
Well, we got off of the horses and we looked down and could see it right from there. We was about, I guess, 500 feet from the site, on the side of the hill. We walked down from there. We had to jump several crevices in the earth from the earthquakes that had happened. All of us thought it was a boat. I asked the Colonel Bickel if he had some dynamite. He says, no, but we got plenty of black powder. And so I told him, go get it.
Following the blast, the team finds nothing with which to convince the rest of the world that the boat-shaped object is the fabled Ark.
Till we left, when we didn't find any timber or anything, well, we figured it wasn't there.
On September 5th, 1960, Life magazine reports the results of the expedition, after which public interest in the object wanes for everyone except Ron Wyatt.
We at that point in time began to do a lot of research, background research on the probable landing site of Noah's Ark, and review the existing stories about people that claim to have seen the Ark on the mountain and nearby areas.
Over 200 versions of a global deluge, a flood of planetary proportions, exist in the folklore and historical references of various cultures. Written individual accounts provide abundant evidence for a universal flood theory. Ron Wyatt's independent studies reveal approximately 30 different sightings of the Ark's purported resting place on or near Mount Ararat.